All right. Somebody read 8, 1 through 3 for me. Judges 8, 1 through 3.
I can.
You got it, Warren? Thank you.
Just let me get there.
Okay.
Judges chapter 8, 1 through 3.
Yep.
Now the men of Ephraim said to him, "Why have you done this to us by not calling us when you went to fight with the Midianites?" And they reprimanded him sharply. So he said to them, "What have I done now in comparison with you? Is it not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, Zia, and what was I able to do in comparison with you?" Then their anger toward him pleaded, and he said.
Okay, so we're in the middle of the story of Gideon. And Gideon has, the famous part of the story is that he started with way too many people and some of them went home, and then there were 10,000 more that went home because they lapped the water. And he ends up with 300 soldiers against about 135,000 soldiers. And they surround him in the valley, break the pitchers with torches in them, and rattle the sabers and whatever else they did. And the Midianites turned on themselves, mostly killed themselves. And now Gideon is chasing what's left of their army. And he's chasing them through the Jezreel Valley and all in that area. And he comes up to Ephraim. Well, what do we know about Ephraim? Or he comes up to the men of Ephraim. Ephraim was long gone himself. What do you know about Ephraim? Who was his dad? Joseph. Yeah. Ephraim and Manasseh were the two children of Joseph that split into two tribes. And Ephraim is known as warriors. They like a good fight, so to speak. They don't like to run away from it. They helped a lot of the other tribes conquer when they moved in to Judea and into Israel. They helped them conquer their country and then went back to their area. So they like a good fight. So that's why they're mad at Gideon. How come you didn't call us? You know we like to fight. We want to be part of this battle. We want to do what's right. And Gideon plays them up good. What is his... First off, he says that the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim is better than the vintage of Abiezer. I think I said that right. What do we know about Abiezer? Anything? The only thing I know about it is that Gideon's father is an Abiezerite. The son of Gideon, the son of Joash, the Abiezerite. So what he's telling them is, your fresh squeezins of grapes over here is better than the fine wine of my own country, of my own hometown, of my father's farm, or whatever it is. So he's belittling the produce, if you will, of his hometown versus what Ephraim can do. So he's putting them on a pedestal. Your least is better than my best. And then they decide, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't so bad we missed the fight. And we did get these two princes that we get to go ahead and execute, which seems to be something that they all like to do, kill the enemy. You'll find as we go through Judges, and I know we already have in talking about Ehud and Deborah and Barak and all those, it's bloody. It is just bloody. We live in a very sanitized life compared to what they lived in. And ladies, anybody up for driving a tent peg through somebody's head? not really up on your list of things to do. That's a pretty bold, gruesome thing to do. But yet we have it recorded for us. Okay, so Gideon and his guys have appeased Ephraim, who's supposed to be on their side, and now they're going to continue on with their chase. Somebody read 4 through 9 for me. Timmy?
When the Gideon was come to the Jordan, he passed over it, and 300 men with him, who were so weary that they couldn't pursue after them that fled. And he said to the men of Succoth, Give, I beseech you, bread to the people that is with me, for they are faint, that they might pursue Zebi and Salmana and kings of Midian. The princes of Succoth answered, Peradventure they fall from the hand of Zebi and Salmana in thy hand, and thou demandest that we should give bread to thy army. He said to them, When the Lord shall deliver Zebi and Salmana into my hand, I'll stretch your flesh with thorns and briars in desert. And going up from thence, he came to Phanuel, and he spoke the like things to the men in that place. And they also answered him. The men of Succoth had answered. And he said to them also, I will return a conqueror in peace, and I will destroy this tower.
Okay. So, who is he chasing after? Who's Gideon chasing after? What are they? What?
Kings of Midian.
Kings of Midian, yes, thank you. Who had Ephraim just killed? Princes of Midian. So they're working up the ladder. They've taken some of the princes out. They're decimating this 130 or 35,000 man army, and they're chasing the remnants of it, and now they're going after the kings. Succoth and Penuel are both Jewish, so they're supposed to be on Gideon's side. But what are they afraid of? Yeah, the Midianites have ruled the land for quite a while, and they've been pretty brutal. And so they don't want to take a chance that they'll come back and get mad at them and destroy them. It seems like after you'd seen 120,000 of their army destroyed, that you might get the clue that God was on the side of Gideon. But they didn't want to do that. We don't know a whole lot about Succoth. Does Penuel ring any bells to you? Read about that place before? I had to look it up. Okay, it didn't just come to mind. That's where Jacob fought with the angel, and the ladder went up and down to heaven. And Jacob named it Penuel because Penuel means face of God. So this is, in Jewish lore, this is a pretty important city. It's a small place, but it was a pretty important town to them because it's where they got their name. Jacob was turned to Israel after he fought with God. They had power with God at that point, had a voice with God. So it was a pretty important place. What is the significance? I mean, with Succoth, we can kind of guess. I'm going to rip your flesh with briars and thorns. Not much ambiguity there, is there? It sounds like it is not going to be fun. What does he mean by tear down the tower? When he's talking about the punishment for Penuel.
Tower of Babel.
Well, this was at Penuel, but it's similar to that. Mm-hmm. What did the tower represent? Yeah. That's where the lookout was. When the armies were coming across the plains, just like in a boat when they go up in the crow's nest, the highest point is where you can see the furthest. So it gave them time to see armies coming and run in, close the gates, and get in the city for protection. So it prevented surprise attacks, if you will. And so he's telling them, I'm going to leave you without protection. I'm going to decimate your city, and you're not even going to be able to protect yourself. Now, at this point, the people from Succoth and from Penuel don't really care, because he's chasing those Midianite guys. And the Midianite guys might turn around and beat him. But as we'll find out, they bet wrong. So somebody read for me 10 through 21. Read that for me. James, thank you.
Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with their armies. There were about 15,000 survivors from the army of the eastern peoples. 120,000 sword-wielding soldiers had been killed. Gideon went up the road of the nomads east of Nobah and Jogbehah and ambushed the surprised army. When Zebah and Zalmunna ran away, Gideon chased them and captured the 2 Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna. He had surprised their entire army. Gideon, son of Joash, returned from the battle by the pass of Paris. He captured a young man from Succoth and interrogated him. The young man wrote down for him the names of the Succoth's officials and city leaders, 77 men in all. He approached the men of Succoth and said, "Look what I have, Zebah and Zalmunna. You insulted me, saying, 'You have not yet overpowered Zebah and Zalmunna, so why should we give bread to your exhausted men?' He seized the leaders of the city, along with some desert thorns and briars. He then threshed the men of Succoth with them. He also tore down the tower of Penuel and executed the city's men. He said to Zebah and Zalmunna, 'Describe for me the men you killed at Tabor.' They said, 'They were like you. Each one looked like a king's son.' He said, 'They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. I swear, as surely as the Lord is alive, if you had let them live, I would not kill you.' He ordered Jether, his firstborn son, 'Come on, kill them.' But Jether was too afraid to draw his sword because he was still young. Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, 'Come on, you strike us, for a man is judged by his strength.' So Gideon killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent-shaped ornaments which were on the necks of their camels.
All right. So we get verification there that there were 135,000 in that army, that God dwindled down to 300 to fight Gideon's army. Just let that sink in for a minute. Over the weekend, you may have seen where 600 illegals stormed the border in Texas to get across the line there. And there were armed men there. And 600 overtook those armed men in a very short period of time. Can you imagine 135,000? And you've got 300 people? You talk about faith. It just astounds me. You want me to do what? John?
It's like a city the size of El Cajon.
Mm-hmm.
And you're coming over the hill with 300 people.
Yeah. We got you right where we want you now. It's just astounding. 135,000. I mean, that's a big army anywhere. And 300 guys. And now there's still 15,000 of them left. And me and my 300 little ants are chasing them. And they're running. 15,000 men of war that drew the sword, as it's described, are running from 300. Think God got his point across? Craig?
I think this goes to show that it was God that was fighting and not just the 300.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The theory in the ancient world was whoever won the battle, their God was the strongest. And that went on forever and ever. That was just the way that they thought. Well, the Israelites, of course, really had the true God on their side. So that came true more often than not. One of the things I want to talk to you about today that we've kind of hinted around, and as we go through Judges and then as we get into Kings later, it talks about the gods of the other people. So Baals, or they're referred to Baals. They're also referred referred to Ashtaroth and groves. And one of the things with the kings that the God condemned the kings for was not taking down the high places. And the high places was where they set up the altars to worship these Baals and Ashtaroth. And in the Old King James, it uses the word groves. And that threw me off for many years because what in the world is a grove got to do with them? Think of it like a totem pole. They made their idols of wood, and the best god was on top, and the lower gods were underneath it, and there was a grove of these trees. There was a series of poles, and then in the center was an altar. And that is where they offered the sacrifice to these gods that were surrounding the altar. And that's been the easiest way for me to think of it, because a totem pole you can relate to. You've all seen a totem pole. You know what it looks like. That's kind of what the Ashtaroth were. And the groves were a series of those that they had carved into wood and made into their gods. And then they sacrificed babies, they sacrificed animals, they sacrificed whatever that particular ethnic group decided they wanted to sacrifice at those places. So Gideon and his 300 weary, tired, hungry soldiers, because they didn't get any food from Succoth or Penuel, are still chasing the Midianite kings. And they finally capture them. They surprise them, surprise attack, and they overtake them, evidently kill the 15,000 and capture the two kings. And then they're headed back to Succoth. They're headed home is where they're headed. But they go back through Penuel and Succoth. And he takes the briars, and the word in this particular case, and I think it even said it in James's rendition or his version, is to thresh your flesh. Now, threshing sounds pretty rotten. I don't know if that's stripping the flesh off. I don't know exactly what that punishment is, but that word is stronger than I'm just going to whip you with some briars and thorns. It's I'm going to do some damage to your body. Can you imagine being this kid? They captured this kid. All right, tell me which one of those guys said, no, we're not going to give you food. So after he wet his pants, he wrote down what all the names of all 77 of the elders of the town of Succoth. Basically, he's signing their death warrant. And he's a young boy, young man, whatever. And he's the elders of his city. He's turning in. He's a traitor. I'm sure it was under threat of life. And so he gives them the names, and they come back in, and he judges them. He disciplines them. He punishes them. There's different versions use different words there for what he did to them. Anyway, it wasn't pleasant. But it's not any better for the people of Penuel. What does he do to them? Kills them.
Kills all the men.
Yeah, kills all the men. Now that may be the result, we just don't know of what happened in Succoth. But in Penuel we know that he killed all the men. So he basically is wiping out these two little towns that would not help him in supporting the right thing. Israel had come to Gideon and said, we want you, God wants you. The Midianites have been oppressing us. We need relief. And God raises up Gideon to wipe out the Midianites, and the very people who called in distress to the Lord wouldn't support him in fighting. That's how God feels when we turn our back on him. We've declared that we're Christians, right? We've declared that we're going to fight for God's side. We want God to deliver us. We want to fight for what's right. Not necessarily, guns and spears, but at least standing for what's right. And when we turn our back, he views it as a traitor. He views it as somebody who's let him down. You've turned back from what you were declaring and what you're standing. I'm not condemning anybody because I've done it, okay? Anybody here not had a moment of weakness and not stood up for what was right? See, we all have, haven't we? Sure we have. In a moment of weakness, we've just not stood up. You don't have to go against God in the sense of just blatantly defying him. Just not standing up for him. Not standing up for what's right. We've all done that. And that's what these guys did. They wouldn't stand up for what was right.
And I find it interesting. He's not saying, join us.
Right.
He's not saying you have to risk anything. Just give my guys some bread.
Yeah, I don't want my guys to. They're chasing these guys for miles and miles. I just don't want them to die on the road.
Yeah.
Derek.
And this isn't the only time we see an incident like this. David goes to Nabal.
Yeah.
It's the exact same situation. He's actually been actively protecting Nabal's shepherds. Nabal may or may not know that. And he does the same thing. He says, give me some food for my guys that have been working, and Nabal rejects him.
Yep.
Later on, we see David doesn't have to deal with him to touch the everything himself.
Yep.
So it just backs up the point that you're saying. That's very true.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's others. We're human beings. We are going to have our ups and downs. We're stronger at some points than we are at other points. We want to be strong all the time, don't we? But darn it, we're not. Thank goodness for God's grace and mercy in those times that we can turn back to him. You've probably heard me say this before, and a lot of people have this feeling about David, that he's a man after God's own heart. But what was so special about David is he failed spectacularly. He messed up so bad, so many times. With his kids, with Bathsheba, you just name it. But every time he got back up and he turned back to God and he kept trying. That's why he's a man after God's own heart. Not that he's perfect. Not that he's better than any of the rest of us. It's that he kept turning back to God. And that's what we have to do. When we fail, we don't want to get mired down in, oh, I just can't do this. And you just spiral down to, no, turn around to God. That's going to be the way out. Alan?
Yeah, I was going to say Peter did a number 2.
Yes.
He's pretty good too about that. It just reminds me of the passage of scripture that spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And I mean, that's just encapsulates the whole concept of what you're trying to present.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's who we are. That's why it's so important that Jesus came and lived as a man on this earth. So he'd know what we went through. So he experienced it. So he could say, I did it. I know what you're going through. Doesn't it mean more to you when somebody is trying to comfort you if they've been through the same thing or something similar? You at least feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, don't you? They got through it, I can get through it. And that's what Jesus does for us. I got through this life, and you can do it too. James?
I think the men of Succoth are really, and Penuel are really a lot worse than we might give them credit for. Because whether they had some sort of agreement with the Midianites or whatever, but they're clearly afraid of them. And they are not willing to help out Gideon, probably because they're afraid of being on the wrong. It's kind of like you get the impression of, well, have you already beaten them yet?
Right.
I'm willing to do what's right as long as it's easy.
Because there's no risk.
Because there's no risk. And in a lot of ways, that can be us today.
Sure.
Are we only, representing God when it's easy? When we surround ourselves, which we all like to do, surround ourselves with other Christians, but are we only Christians when we're surrounded by other Christians? And if it only gets hard, are we no longer Christians? And
Yep.
it's, I think, just really horrible for them to turn them down and to just go, well, it's just too hard for us to do that. I don't want to be caught on the wrong side of this.
They're definitely were hedging their bets, and they lost. they were trying to play both sides against the middle. Well, I won't attack you either, but I'm not going to help you. These guys have been persecuting us for many, many years, and I'm afraid of them. They were trying to play it safe, and they ended up paying the price for it. Not at all what we do, is it? We don't at all try to play it safe and try to minimize our risk and all those kind of things. And business and real estate and other stuff, that's probably a good thing to do. But in your life with God, not so much. It should be something you're willing to stand for no matter what and when. So, these two kings, Gideon asks if they killed some men up near Tabor. Now, Tabor is that area where Deborah and Barak took their army. It's all around that Jezreel Valley. Mount Tabor is really the area. And we don't have any record of this story. We don't know when the Midianites killed these men. We don't know whether it was the beginning of this battle, whether it was some other time. We don't know exactly. But it stuck in Gideon's mind, and he knew about it. And I've got to assume that they knew he knew about it. Because why else would they admit it? Yeah, we killed a bunch of guys that looked just like you. They dress the same, they look like the sons of kings. They were, man, they're your spitting image. And then he goes, yeah, you're right. Those were my brothers. You killed my brothers. Now, I don't know what the circumstances were, so it's hard to judge, but he says, if you had left them alive, I would surely let you live. Most of the time in war, especially at this day and time, they weren't real big on prisoners of war unless they were women slaves, unless they could make them women slaves. They'd normally kill them and take all their jewelry and wealth and that, which we'll find that they did later. So I'm not sure what the circumstances would be where they would leave Gideon's brothers alive, but evidently, as the Midianites did many other times, they didn't show a lot of mercy. And I don't know whether they tortured them or just killed them or what it was, but they killed Gideon's brothers, and he's not happy about it. James?
Maybe it makes sense now why Gideon's father, 2 chapters ago, is so insistent on protecting his son. I never put these two things together, that he's the youngest,
Right.
and perhaps he's the only one left now. And so when the men of the town come and try to do something about him pulling down all the Baals and the Asherah poles, then he's like, I'm not losing my last son. I lost all the rest of them to this battle with the Midians. I'm not losing my last son.
Could very well
I
be.
never put that together.
Yeah, could very well be. Yeah. Like I said, we don't have that direct tie, but that makes sense. So that may be what it was. Either way, it was well known in Gideon's family So what does he ask to be done? And who does he ask to do it? Who's Gideon ask? What's he tell his youngest son to do? Draw your sword and kill the king. Okay, which one's your youngest son, our Timmy, Liv? Okay, Liv, you got to pull out a sword and chop off the heads of these two guys.
Actually said first
Oh, it's our Timmy. Okay, it's you, sorry.
one. I confused you with the,
He was still a youth. That's what, yeah. He's a firstborn, but still a youth. That's what it says. So this young boy, first off, dads, can you picture that? Talking to your son and going, okay, take your sword. You see those two guys over there? Go cut their heads off.
Breaks them up right.
Yeah. You think, like I said, you think we live in a sanitized world compared to what their world was? He didn't even think about doing this. These men were enemies. They've killed your family. You're going to be classified as the Avenger, so to speak, and you're going to go over there and kill them. I don't know that I would have had the guts of, I don't know how old this kid is, but it says still a youth, so I'm assuming he's probably under 18, but I don't know that. But either way, having to go kill somebody, it's one thing if they were fighting, if you're fighting with somebody and you accidentally kill them, or even if you're fighting to the death and defending yourself, that's one thing. They're bound up over there, just go over there and kill them. And what's the kid do? It freezes, right? He's shaking in his boots. Nope, I can't do that. I cannot just in cold blood go kill these guys. And then, what do the kings do? Huh?
They tell Gideon to do it himself.
Yeah. What are you, a man or a mouse? You're going to send a little boy to go over here and cut our heads off? Stand up like a man and do it yourself. And so Gideon says, okay, and does. Not sure taunting him was the best attack, but I think they were probably done for anyway, and they realized it. We're going to take their last shot at him.
Or they didn't want some weak-armed boy.
Yeah. Well, in the next chapter, when we learn about one of Gideon's sons, he'll want his armor bearer to kill him. Says he doesn't want to be known for being killed by a woman. So same kind of thing. They didn't want their reputation to be that some kid killed them. So he goes over and kills them and takes away their ornaments and their gold and all that good stuff. All right, so let's 22 to 33. Somebody read that for me. Julie, thank you.
Well,
Oh.
I didn't want to read. I wanted to.
Oh, no. Okay, you can do both.
Okay. Well, I don't want to read. I think that we keep trying to, how would we feel about doing this and everything? And I don't even, when I look at.
Hard to put yourself in that spot, isn't it?
I don't think that we can. I think there are plenty of people on the planet right now who could. People in Haiti, people in war-torn areas, they can understand that. But when you look at the genocide of the Bible, it's very hard for us to understand why God would do that. And a lot of people say he can't be a good God, that he directed all this. But like I said, we can't even begin to fathom what that kind of life is like. I can only look at, right now it's Haiti, I can only look at, countries that are just so war-torn and have been that way
Somalia, Sudan.
for hundreds of years. They understand that bloodshed is kill or be killed. We don't get that, and I don't even think with our best trying to empathize with that, we can't even begin.
Have you ever thought why, when Christ's apostles asked him to teach them how to pray, in the Lord's Prayer, one of the first things he says, "Give us this day our daily bread." How many of you wonder what you're going to eat the next morning? I mean, you may wonder what, but you don't wonder if. Let's see, do I want eggs or oatmeal or cereal or, I have choices. They lived in a survival society. They were praying that they would eat today. That's a different world than we live in. And you're right, it's hard. That's why I try to put myself there, and I can't in exactly like they could. But you have to stop and think. This is a different world. It's a different time. Their lives were different. And when Christ is teaching them to pray, they're praying to God that, please, Lord, let me eat today. That's why the guy with the money bag was so important. Because that little bit of money that they carried with them, he could buy them something to eat. And that let them not have to go out and kill somebody or grind wheat or kill some animal or whatever it was to eat. Daniel?
Glad Julie brought that up because I was hesitant to mention, I'm picking through Deuteronomy. There's other books too that not so much speaking to how we would feel, like maybe Julie was focused on, but the familiarity for them. I mean, Israel knew that this type of corporate punishment, you should call it, is execution, to remove the evil from their camp.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, this person did bad, you bring them before the elders, or you thoroughly inquire if you need to, but they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it. Like, that's kind of how it went.
Like I said, when I say we live in a sanitized life compared to them, there's a whole lot of it that's sanitized.
They did it to their own.
Yeah.
It wasn't even, I know this isn't their own, but they did similar in nature to their own.
Absolutely. Julie, and then Artemia.
So imagine how groundbreaking love your neighbor as yourself.
Uh-huh.
I mean, think about that. We know we need to love the people around us, but imagine being that kind of person raised in that.
Well, the whole concept of forgiveness.
Yeah.
A woman caught in adultery or a man caught in adultery stoned to death under the old law. Christ says, go and sin no more. That's revolutionary. That's completely different. Wait a minute, I'm supposed to forgive that person when they stop doing that? Wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. And if they do it to me, I'm supposed to forgive them 70 times 7? Come on, you got to be kidding me. That can't be right. It just doesn't feel right. But that's what he's called us to do. And it's a very different world than what they lived under.
Lord prayer.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't teach us for the daily bread, like we feed daily bread.
Yeah.
He said super substantial. For daily bread, we don't think what you eat or what you drink. And this is like heavenly bread. He told in the Lord prayer, he told about heavenly bread, Holy Spirit, for super substantial.
I think that's part of it, but I think they were also praying for their daily sustenance.
I don't think so, but
Well, we'll have to disagree.
all the Gospels say about, no, don't think about what.
No, that's what he told his disciples when he sent them out. It was when he told the disciples to go out 2 by 2. He told them, don't think of what you have to eat and who's gonna provide for you, will provide for you in each city. I think that's where that passage is. But anyway, we could talk about that later, but I think that's where it is. Todd? Huh? Oh, you want to read? Sure. We're going to be tight, but go ahead. He bailed you out, Julie, by the way. Nothing, go ahead.
Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over so you and your son, also your son's son. Do you have delivered him? Excuse me, I have a hard time reading. For he has delivered us from the hand of Midian. Amen. Lord, the Lord shall deliver you. Take you and said to them, the request of you, make you give me an earring from the oil. For they had told you that they were Israelites.
Okay, let's stop there because we're probably going to run out of time anyway. Let's discuss this part of it. We'll move on if we have time. So now that Gideon is the big conqueror, what does Israel want? Yeah. Come be our king. Come rule over us. With 300 men, you took out the mighty Midianites. You must be the best general in the world. So come rule over us. And that reaction is not unusual. You know how Eisenhower became president? Winning World War II. You know how Washington became president? Winning the Revolutionary War. That's a fairly typical historical thing. So it's not unusual that the Israelites would come to him and say, hey, you've been this mighty warrior, you know how to lead people, come be our king. Come take care of us. And not just you, they're setting up a whole dynasty. You and your sons and your grandsons and you all come rule over us. We'll submit to your leadership for generations, is what they're saying. And to Gideon's credit, what does he say? Nope. Not just no, but he says, I'll tell you who's going to lead you. God is going to lead you. Now, that is one of the great characteristics of Gideon. You know, at the beginning, he tested God, didn't he? The fleece and the signs and all that kind of stuff. I can't be the guy. It's like Moses. That can't be me. I can't even talk straight. He tested God, but once his faith was firm, he acted on it and he gave credit to God. And he didn't try to set himself up as a god. He didn't try to, in his case, I do liken it to George Washington. Because George Washington, they wanted to make king of America. And he said no. And they wanted him to keep being president even after he's president. And he said no. I don't want to be a dynasty. I don't want to be your king. This is set up as a different form of government. And Gideon is here saying to the Israelites, your form of government has been from God and should be from God. If you quit chasing after all these idols that you chase after and all these other gods, God is the one who will rule over you and who will take care of you. They hadn't gotten that. Or they had forgotten that, let's put it that way, because they go through cycles. It's funny, we are very harsh on the Israelites during the time of the judges and the time of the kings, and rightfully so in general, but it's such a long time period. 40 years. Any of you guys ever forgot anything in 40 years? I forgot last week. It's pretty easy to do. And your attitude changes about things. And the Israelites let the world seep in. They let human practices seep in. They got distracted from serving God. Sound familiar to anybody? Ever had that happen or know somebody that's happened to? I'm sure you can all say yes. Because we're human. Again, that's that thing about David. When he found himself in that spot, he got back up and he turned back to God. And that's what God wants of us. Thankfully, he doesn't expect perfection. But he does expect, hey, you've drifted away, you need to turn around and get back. You need to strengthen yourself. You need to quit what you're doing right now and get back to what you used to be doing. So Gideon says no, and says God will be, but there is one thing that I'd like. What does he want? Gold, earrings. That says that they wore earrings because they were, or they knew had earrings because they were Ishmaelites. Where have we heard of the Ishmaelites before? It's been a while. They're the ones that sold Joseph into Egyptian captivity. They were the traveling gypsies, if you want to call them that traded and went through, and they bought Joseph from his brothers and then sold him down into slavery in Egypt. But regardless of that, they were known for jewelry, even on their camels. It says they took the crescents of gold off of the camels. And I don't know what Gideon's thought process is here, why he wants to do this. Because what does he do with this gold and the purple raiment that he'd taken off the kings?
Decorates the ephod.
He makes an ephod. And an ephod is like a big vest. It's the priests wear it. And sometimes it's adorned with jewelry and gold and precious stones, and they wear it in religious services and when the priests are serving. And it was actually something that God had allowed and designed them to do, for them to do. They made an ephod for Aaron. So it wasn't like he was going into uncharted grounds in what he was doing. But he sets it up somewhere in his home. He goes home, finally, okay, I've got the gold, I've done this, I want to go back to my house and live happily ever after. And he sets up this ephod in some form or fashion. And the people start worshiping it. And it says it became a snare to Gideon and his family. Now, I don't know whether Gideon actually fell into that same trap of worshiping this thing that was the symbol of their conquest of the Ishmaelites, or it was just that he was allowing the people to get there. And we'll talk more about it next Sunday. Well, there's demigod and there's demigod. Demigod is, I consider it lesser. Demagogue is like a political somebody here on the circuit. Demigod is somebody that they consider like a secondary god. Sure. Yeah, take